The fact is, he converted to Judaism. And then in the course of time, the nobility, his advisors, also converted to Judaism, and then his people. And by the year 900, this was a Jewish kingdom. This was a Jewish kingdom. This was a Jewish kingdom.
Today, I'm going to talk about this coin. Quite an interesting one, this. This turned up in a Viking hoard in Sweden, but kind of strange writing. Looks Arabic, doesn't it? It looks actually quite a lot like a dirham, and that looks a lot like the Shahada. You'd expect it to say, Muhammad is the messenger of God. It doesn't. It says, Moses is the messenger of God. This is the 10th century AD. Who exactly is stamping coins with the idea that Moses is the messenger of God? Well, to answer this question, we can't really be looking at Sweden. We have to go quite some distance. If you go to the Caucasus, the mountains north of Turkey, if you go to the Crimea on the Black Sea, around this time, you have a very unusual state that's called the Khazar Khanate. And yes, that is the word Khan. You may recognize it from Genghis Khan. Khan is essentially a term that you find applied to the leaders of steppe nomads of horsemen. These guys who arrive from Central Asian steppes proceed to knock over whatever power structures are there and start building their own state. And that's actually kind of what the Khazars are trying to do around this time frame. They're trying to build their own state. How do you do that? When you're starting from scratch, it's really quite a challenge to build a state. But you know what's really helpful? A worldview that says you are in charge because the Lord Almighty says so. It's actually quite useful. You see this in Western Europe. You see the conversions of the Saxons, you see the conversions of the Pomeranians, of the Poles, and the first thing that these groups do when they go Catholic is they write to the Pope and they say, send me a crown. I'm not joking, that's literally the words of the King of Hungary, the first King of Hungary. The Pope gave him a crown. In the East, you've got various groups converting to Islam. In the middle, you've got groups like the various Russian principalities adopting Orthodoxy. Why are they doing this? It's about control. It's about power. You know, gods are one thing, but if you want to be in charge, there are two ways you can do it. You can say, I am the biggest, toughest guy, I will punch you in the face, and you can be in charge. Or you can say, man upstairs says I'm in charge, and you're in charge. Obviously I oversimplify, but one of the things that the organized Abrahamic religions do really well is create a formalized power structure. There are layers. There is a guy at the top, and he has a divine right to be there. So you see, basically people adopting it as a political act. It's something you do to make your power more solid. And the Khazar Khanate is really no exception. Around this time, they're being actively proselytized by a number of groups. In Cordoba, in the Caliphate in Spain, there is a man called Hasdai ibn Shaprut. He's the foreign secretary to the Caliph. He himself is Jewish. This comes from that time frame where Islamic leaders habitually employed Jewish advisors. And he starts hearing really strange rumours. He'd heard that they were Jewish, which struck him as bizarre. Fantastic, if possible, but bizarre. And Jewish theology around this time is being built on the fact that the Jews are a stateless people. But suddenly, there's a state. What's this about? He gets very curious, and of course he's got some contacts, being the foreign secretary of a major world power. So he gets some letters sent out. Now, sending letters this sort of distance around this time, that's not an easy job. But after a couple of attempts and several months of travel time, he actually gets a reply. Now, the reply is written by a man who calls himself Khan Joseph. So you can see where this is going already. Khan Joseph is pleased to confirm that he is in fact Jewish, that the Khazar Khanate is in fact Jewish, and that it has been for some time. he's got a very interesting explanation for why this has come to be. So the Khazar Khanate finds itself presented with several options. You find Byzantine emissaries requesting that they convert to Orthodoxy, and at the same time, they're receiving emissaries from the Caliphate requesting that they convert to Islam. Joseph has a very specific anecdote. He talks about one of his predecessors, a Khan called Bulan. And Bulan is presented with this choice. He first asks the Islamic emissaries, if I were to be a Christian or a Jew, which would you prefer? They all answer, we would prefer that you were Jewish. He asked the Orthodox the same. Would you rather that I became a Muslim or became a Jew? He asked. And they answered, we would prefer that you became a Jew. And then Bulan put it to them that from their own mouths, they had both endorsed Judaism. So he converted to Judaism, very much taking the third option. So Hasdai was obviously pretty pleased with all of this news, but nothing good lasts forever. Don't forget that that coin, we found that in the Spillings hoard in Sweden. And I suppose it could have shown up there through legitimate trade. The Norse who had made Russia their home at this point, yeah, they traded. They did a lot of that. They also did quite a lot of fighting. Like, quite a lot. At this same time, a number of these princes are converting to Orthodoxy at Byzantine urging. And all of a sudden, this allows them to craft marriage alliances with the Byzantines. It allows them to align their interests. Let's just say I'm the Prince of Kiev. Hi, I'm the Prince of Kiev. What I'm going to do is I'm going to marry the daughter of the Byzantine Emperor. All of a sudden, our interests are aligned. We are now family. We're now of one blood. We are emotionally and biologically connected. We will act in concert at some point. So we can arrange mutual interests. But you're not going to marry heathens. It's the only Jewish state between the fall of the Second Temple and the rise of the modern state of Israel. I mean, they're on their own religiously, and it makes it incredibly hard to do these sorts of marriage alliances, they're the bread and butter of medieval diplomacy. You seal pretty much every deal with a trade of bodies. The Khazar Khanate is in this really awkward situation where it's Jewish, nobody else is Jewish. It makes them an easy target. It means that anybody else who wants to convert to another guy's religion has immediate allies against them. The Alans, in fact, went Orthodox and invaded them a couple of times at Byzantine urging. You can't forge alliances in the same way as groups of larger religious factions can. We don't really know exactly how the Khazars fell. Joseph's letter was written sometime between 950 and 960, and that is the only documentary record from a Khazar that we actually have.
Professor Lasky, you had mentioned before, obviously, the Khazars and the king and the nation that converts in the Khazari to the Jewish religion. What is the historical support? There's been so many novels, so many books on the Khazars and the Khazar and the empire and et cetera, et cetera. What's the historical support for that whole story?
Okay, I'd say the world's knowledge about the Khazars started in the 10th century when Chastai ibn Shaprut, who was the sort of foreign minister of Abdul Rahman III, the Caliph, the Umayyad Caliph of Andalusia, of Muslim Spain, heard from travelers that there was this nation in Central Asia, this Jewish nation. He wrote a letter and received to the king and asked what's going on. He received a letter back. This is from a king of the time named Yosef, who explains what I said before about the king's search for for the true religion. It is true that many people over the years have doubted the historicity of the letter. There has a question of whether it's just the king and the royalty or the nobility that converted or everyone converted. We don't have any literature as such from the Khazars. However, in the past, I'd say 50 years or so, more and more research has substantiated the letter from Yosef. There's some of the descriptions of the Khazar life and the Khazar history seem to be substantiated from other sources. coins were found mentioning the name Moses. A letter was found in the Genizah, which might have some Khazar writing or Khazar names in it. And therefore, even though there are still people who doubt to this day that Khazars actually became Jewish, I would say that I follow those experts who say definitely there is a historical basis. Now, according to the Khazari, the conversion was in the year 740, the Common Era. Most historians date it to the 9th century, in the 800s. According to the Khazari, the Khazars were very successful physically, militarily, financially. I don't know how much we can substantiate that, but the basic idea that the Khazars converted and there were this Jewish kingdom, I think is pretty well established now, despite the naysayers. I would just add that there are those who have tried to say that Ashkenazi Jewry is descended from the Khazars and therefore have no relationship to the biological people of Israel, no relation to the land of Israel. That theory, I don't think has anything to recommend it. The Ashkenazi Jewry came from the West. They speak a German language, Yiddish. We have no real way of finding descendants of the Khazars today.
Aside from the Khazari, which brings the Khazars, are there any other Jewish sources that talk about the Khazars and their conversion that are not based on Yehuda Halevi?
Well, you have the letter, which was the basis of the Khazari, the letter from Joseph, the king of the Khazars, to Chastayim and Shaprut. And you have a number of Karaite sources mentions the Khazars as converts. We have the letters I said from the Genizah. We have the coins. So there seems to be reason to accept it. And as I said, in terms of Joseph's letter, the details in the letter have now been substantiated as being accurate from what we know from other sources. So the doubting, I can understand why people would want to doubt. We have no literature. We don't have other contemporary accounts of it. We do have Muslim sources which mention the Khazars and their Judaism. Some do and some don't, and they mention it. But would it be nice to be able to dig up the areas which now that was once Khazaria and find Hebrew documents? And I mean, it would be wonderful, but we don't have that.
Where is that exactly today?
It's Central Asia, between the Caspian and the Black Sea, areas which are very, still very, I'd say, I won't say warlike, but there is a lot of civil unrest in those areas. The former areas of the former Soviet Union or parts still of Soviet Union. The document from the Genizah, if I'm not mistaken, is from Kiev or mentions Kiev. So we're talking about that Central Asia part of the world.
Now we come to the others. There was Moshe ibn Ezra. By the way, Ibn means son of, but it's a family name. Moshe ibn Ezra. And then Abraham ibn Ezra, distant cousins. And then Yehuda Halevi, the greatest Hebrew poet since King David. Yehuda Halevi was a physician. He lived in Toledo. He writes a poem which reads as follows: "My heart is in the east, and I am in the uttermost west. I cannot enjoy my food, I cannot rest, because the holy city of Jerusalem is in Christian thrall, and I am tied up in Arab chains." He was a highly respected citizen of Toledo. People came to him. He was a great physician. And also, he wrote a book. And his book is a remarkable work. It's called the Khazari. And it's based on an event that took place. And that is the establishment of an independent Jewish kingdom in Central Asia in the year 750. Have you heard about that? the kingdom of the Khazar Empire. Who were the Khazars? The Khazars were a Turkish tribe, and they, on the warpath, succeeded in establishing control over a very important part of Asia. Their center was on the Volga River, and their empire extended from north of the Black Sea to east of the Caucasus. Why is that important? Because they were on the main path of the trade routes from Asia to Europe. So they controlled it. And they were very strong. They established themselves. And they had been one of the Turkish tribes, should we call it nomadic warriors, like the Mongols later on. The king of the Khazars decided, now that he is head of an empire, he should adopt a civilized religion. Now, he adopted Judaism. Now, why? There are stories, of course. One of the stories, the legend is, he invited a Catholic, a Christian priest, who told him about Christianity, and in the course of describing Christianity, said about Jesus and the Old Testament and Judaism and so on. Then he invited a Muslim, and the Muslim talked about Muhammad and the Quran and the prophets of ancient Israel who preceded. And then he said, you said that Christianity comes out of Judaism, and you said Islam comes out of Judaism. Well, I'd like to speak to the Jews. And as the story goes, he invited a Jewish scholar, and he converted to Judaism. That's the story. Now let's look at the reality, the political reality. The political reality is interesting. At that time, in the year 750, had he converted to Christianity, he would have had to submit himself to the authority of the Emperor of Constantinople, who was head of the Christian world. Had he adopted Islam, he would have had to submit to the authority of the Caliph of Baghdad, who was head of the Muslim world. He didn't want a boss. He wanted to be independent. And I suppose he also had contact with Jews, and he knew about Judaism. The fact is, he converted to Judaism. And then in the course of time, the nobility, his advisors, also converted to Judaism, and then his people. And by the year 900, this was a Jewish kingdom, you could say a Jewish empire in Central Asia, which, stimulated the imagination of the Jews. Imagine there is an independent Jewish nation someplace in Asia. Well, we live in Spain, and that's over 1,000 miles away. But they were very much intrigued and excited at the prospect. In fact, Khazar ibn Shaprut, who was chief advisor to the Sultan of Cordoba in Spain, wrote a letter to the king of the Khazars. And he got an answer, and these letters are in pure Hebrew. And for a long time, scholars were debating that, this is not true, these letters were invented, it's fiction. And for a long time, scholars were debating that, this is not true, these letters were invented, it's fiction. Until they discovered letters a few years ago from the Cairo Geniza. You're familiar with the Cairo Geniza? I'll tell you about that. But these letters are in Hebrew, and they were written by Khazarian merchants in Kiev, which later became the Christian capital of Russia. And these Khazarian Jews in Kiev were corresponding with their counterparts in Khazaria, and the letters are in pure Hebrew, and they're Jewish. In other words, you can tell from the language and the expressions that they are traditional Jews, because there was a theory that they were sectarian Jews, that they were Karaite Jews. In any event, this was a Jewish kingdom, and the letters between Khazar ibn Shaprut, who was the minister of the Caliph of Cordoba, and King Joseph II of Khazaria, it's an interesting correspondence in Hebrew. Also, there was a book written, a true historical analysis of the whole history, and it seems that the records indicate that. I'm saying that because the Christians never mentioned that. Why didn't the Christians talk about that? It was very important. Because in Christian theology, there cannot be a Jewish kingdom. It's goes against the church fathers. The church fathers says there will never be a Jewish authority and Jewish kingdom. So the Christians didn't talk about it. But between the Arab historians and the Jewish correspondents and the Turkish and Greek indications, it's clear that there was such. By the way, as I said, their center was on the Volga River, which empties into the Caspian Sea, and they also controlled the eastern slopes of the Caucasus Mountains. Now, in 1000, the Eastern Slavic kingdoms had been converted to Christianity. And so the Prince of Kiev, who was a Christian, combined with the Emperor of Constantinople, and they attacked the Jewish kingdom of Khazaria. And the Khazarian kingdom came to an end as an empire, but there were still Khazarian Jews living there. An interesting thing is that I met Jews from that group in Israel. One of them married my wife's cousin. So we were at the wedding. It was very nice. They got married, so I was speaking to her husband. By the way, he looked like a warrior in Genghis Khan's army. And I asked him, what language did you speak? So he says, Tat. I said, Tat, what is it? I don't know, that's the language we spoke. So I said, why don't you count from 1 to 10 in Tat? So he counted from 1 to 10. I said, okay, it's Persian. It's a Persian dialect. Then he tells me, you know, we are all descendants of converts. All of us. I said, really? What makes you say that? He says, well, it's a tradition. And the fact is that among us, there are no Kohanim and no Leviim. Kohanim and Leviim are descendants from Aaron. Every Kohen is a direct descendant from Aaron. And Leviim are descendants of the tribe of Levi. But Jews who convert to Judaism, or non-Jews who convert to Judaism, are Israelites. They can't be Kohanim or Leviim. And this whole group of Jews from Derbent are all Israelites, but they're not Kohanim and Leviim. But what did Yehuda Halevi write? Yehuda Halevi wrote this book, the Khazari, because he knew the story of the king of the Khazars converting to Judaism. But he didn't go into the details. He just wrote a dialogue, a Platonic dialogue between the Jewish scholar and the king of the Khazars. And that's the meaning of the book. That's the whole purpose of the book, the Khazari. It's Yehuda Halevi's philosophy of Judaism. It's a beautifully written book, and it is the first great Zionist document written, namely a Jew living in exile and speaking about the hope of the Jews to rebuild the land of Israel and the hope of the Jews to live as independent, free, independent people in the land of Israel. He explains all of this in the course of the dialogue, and of course explains the beauty of Judaism and the greatness of Judaism and so on. Yehuda Halevi also was you could say, dedicated Zionist, because with all of his success, and he was a physician who had a good reputation, he still felt he doesn't want to continue living in a Christian country, because Toledo had become Christian by this time. And Yehuda Halevi set out to go to the land of Israel. He actually went. It is reported that he landed in several North African cities, in the Kairouan and in Egypt. And that's the end. We don't know after that what happened. Of course, there are legends about what happened, but we don't know what happened. He disappears. He was about 75 years old at the time. And the journey was not easy, especially going from one hostile environment to another. And the environment in the land of Israel was very hostile because the Crusaders were still on the march against the infidels, and Jews are just as infidel as Muslims.
First, let me, when you see Ashkenazic Jews sharing high similarity to Romanians and Hungarians, this is because both of these populations were offshoots of the Khazars. They were both founded by these members of the Caucasus who ruled this area of north of the Black Sea, where we have South Russia nowadays, between the 7th and 13th centuries. Very powerful empire. They converted to Judaism in the 8th century, and they sent offshoots to Eastern Europe. And we still, some Ashkenazic Jews are mapped to this region of Ukraine. They're not all mapped to Ashkenaz. Most of them are, but some of them are mapped to Ukraine, and we can see very nicely some kind of migration route using GPS.
So
It has been proved.
So the Jewish people in Israel will be referred to as the descendants of the Jewish people in Africa, and not not the other way around.
Not on the other way. Difficult to make it admitted by them. Difficult to make it admitted by them. Difficult to make it admitted by them.
You know what you are? You're an ancient Israelite.
Ancient Israel, that's who we are. That's who we are. So if you give me time, if you give me time,
But
all that he said,
I know. We don't have.
so many years.
I know. Look at this. This is pages and pages of notes. And I promise we'll give more teaching. But here is my challenge to you.
All right.
I'm hearing some of your traditions. It's like the days of the Bible.
Yes.
Do you want to remain ancient Israelites, or you want to be Jews? Do you want to remain ancient Israelites, or you want to be Jews? Do you want to remain ancient Israelites, or you want to be Jews?
Hitler was, and the Nazis, of course, expanded on Margaret Sanger's approach to eugenics, right? Eugenics was a movement that was born in the United States under hard doctrines of racism, with the intent of eliminating the tribe of Judah in the African-American community in this country, right? To eliminate them.
There is something special about you, Judah. There is something special about you, Israel, or Yashara'al. When I say Judah, Yahawadah. That is the ancient pronunciation of the word. There is something special about you, Judah. Yahweh only spoke to you, to us, as a nation, and he spoke to no other nation. That's why we are supposed to be what? That light. We're Yah's chosen people that's separated. We're supposed to be the nation that's teaching the nations, not the nations teaching us.
Lion of Judah come upon the earth, bringing unquenchable fire. All the tribes of Israel and the believers stand in power. Speak with authority, worship uncontrollably. There's something about you, Judah. Fire upon the kingdom of darkness. We may suffer for a little while, but joy cometh in the morning.
Judah special, no wonder we were a chosen vessel. In and out of captivity, weaving like a pretzel. Messiah come through the tribe, clean out the bloodline. We disciples, so put us up on the front line. Face to face with crime, cause we ain't scared to grind. When you connect the divine, we stay pressed for time. Evangelize, get defined, put us in prison in. Worship first, we always invite the spirit in. Hold revival through a pen, stacking souls in empty bins. Joy in the morning, this a warning, you will never win. Fire upon the head of the serpent, he next tail chirping. It's too late cause your tail's already burning. I don't want your riches, gotta match you with gold streets. Movers all around me, the light shine, no police. The living used to be deceased, resurrected to a feast. Nothing like being in peace at the table with the meat.
What's your thoughts? Please be respectful with your comments. Also, please click the like, click the notification bell, and subscribe to this channel.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10.